Hey guys, it's Kenny here from the FantasyFanatics.com and the Fantasy Golf Degenerates, going over my cash game cornerstones for the Wells Fargo Championship. Now, before we get into this week's tournament, let's recap the Valero Texas Open, since there wasn't any DFS for the Zurich Open last week. My picks last week were 2 weeks ago were Charlie Hoffman, Brendan Steele, Daniel Summerhays, and of course, Keegan Bradley. I got crushed for using Keegan in cash, and it definitely bit me in the ass. I actually spoke about how this could be a problem come Friday night, and it definitely was for me. I learned my lesson on that one. No more Keegan in cash. The other 3 guys made the cut. Didn't really perform too well, so it was just not the best week for me, even though we did get 3 of 4 through. So as I try and forget about that dumb call about Keegan, let's move on to this week's Wells Fargo Championship. This tournament is usually played at Quail Hollow Country Club, but because the PGA Championship is hosted there this year, the tournament has been moved to Eagle Point Golf Course in Wilmington, North Carolina. This course has been getting rave reviews by players and media alike. The president of the club is a member at Augusta National, and they hired Marsh Benson, who was the superintendent at Augusta for years, as a consultant for the last couple of years here at Eagle Point. So there are people who say that this course reminds them of Augusta National. It's a 7,400-yard par 72 with 4 par 3s, 4 par 5s. 3 of the par 5s are reachable in 2. There's also a possible drivable par 4 on the course, which is always fun to have at least one of those per tournament. The course is fairly straight. There's actually only one hole with a dog leg, and that's going to be the 11th hole, and the fairways are wide. So I think this will definitely play as a second shot course. The greens are large but heavily sloped and undulated with false fronts, crowned edges on the greens. Water, large bunkers, and somewhat thicker rough will be in play throughout the course. Now, it's not crazy thick, but I mean, it is 2.5 inches, and it is going to be overseeded with ryegrass. So, compared to the last few weeks on tour, it's definitely going to be a little bit thicker rough. Wind is also going to be a factor at this course. It's less than a mile from the Atlantic Ocean. As of now, it looks like the AM/PM wave might have an advantage, as the winds will be calmest during Thursday morning tee times, but forecasts can change. So make sure you check the weather report Wednesday evening before you start making your lineups. I definitely think this is one of those weeks where one wave will be more favorable. So make sure you play that narrative this week. I think it's going to be helpful when it comes to DFS. If you want a more detailed course description, check out Jason Wedge's article on the FantasyFanatics.com or my article on another site, which you can find on my Twitter page at KendoVT. The main stats I'm looking for this week are going to be strokes gained approach, like I said, second shot course, birdie or better percentage, par 5 scoring, strokes gained around the green, and par 4 efficiency from 400 to 450 yards. Now, on the Fantasy Fanatics cheat sheet, I'll be weighing recent form at 50%, stats at 45%, and I'm throwing in course history at Augusta National at 5%. I know usually stats, I put my stats around 50%, recent form at 30%, but with no course history here, I'm leaning more heavily on recent form. So now, let's get on with the picks. My first pick, it's going to be Paul Casey at $9,900. Casey's been playing really consistent golf the last 9 months, making 16 of 17 cuts and 7 in a row so far here in 2017. His most recent performance was a 6th place finish at the Masters. He's played really well at Augusta the last 2 years, and if there really is a course correlation between Eagle Point and Augusta, this bodes well for him this week. Casey's been extremely solid from tee to green this season and has been exceptional with his iron play and chipping, both of which I would think will be important this week. He's also inside the top 15 in par 4 efficiency from 400 to 450 yards and is well above average for the field in birdie or better percentage in par 5 scoring. His price isn't too prohibitive, and I think he has a chance to contend in this somewhat weaker field. It's definitely a top-heavy field this week where all the best golfers, there's only a small amount of really top-notch golfers, and they're all 9K and above. Now, he does play the PM-AM ways, so that is a bit worrisome. If the forecast calls for a distinct advantage to the AM/PM wave, I might think about moving up $100 to Adam Scott, who I think might have just a little bit more upside than Casey, making him a great GPP play, but just a little less consistency this year, even though he has been on an upward trend his last two tournaments. Next up, it's going to be Francesco Molinari at $9,200. Molinari might be my favorite play of the week in any format. Again, another guy who's been playing well this year and has been very consistent. So far in 2017, Molinari has made 7 of 8 cuts with 6 top 22 finishes. He hits it straight off the tee. I think he's second in driving accuracy for the year and is not super short as many people think, as he's ranked inside the top 95 in driving distance for the year. I mean, he's not a bomber, but he's not just going to poke it out there. He still can reach it out there close to 300 yards or more on every drive. He's also 4th in strokes gained approach, so the combo of of straight semi-long drives and excellent iron game seems like it's the perfect fit for this course. He also makes a ton of birdies, plays par 5s well, is an above-average putter, and is inside the top 10 in par 4 efficiency from 400 to 450 yards. He's been doing extremely well recently, as he was 5th in greens and regulation at the Heritage, 6th in greens and regulation at the Masters, and 22nd in greens and regulation at Bay Hill. Those were his last 3 events played. He also has gained nearly 7 strokes on the field off the tee at Bay Hill and Heritage combined, and 6.5 strokes on approaches at those 2 same events. I'm sure he would have gained strokes on the field in those 2 categories at the Masters, but they don't track strokes gained stats. He will be my highest owned guy in GPPs, a staple in my cash lineup, and he is my pick to win. Plus, he plays the AM/PM wave, so I feel safe rolling with him in every single format. Next up, it's going to be Kevin Kisner at $8,400. Kisner's coming off another disappointing runner-up finish last week at the team competition at the Zurich, and it's becoming sort of commonplace for him to come up just short of a win. As we saw at Bay Hill when he choked away the lead on the back 9, and we've seen in the past year or so multiple playoff losses by Kisner. The thing about DraftKings is we don't necessarily need him to win, especially at this price. He definitely seems underpriced to me for a guy who's made 8 cuts in a row in 2017 and 20 of his last 21 cuts overall. Plus, in his 8 cuts made this year, he has 5 top 11s. That's really impressive stuff. And if his price was $1,000 more, I really wouldn't complain. Kisner's inside the top 20 in both strokes gained approach, strokes gained around the green, and he's inside the top 40 in both birdie or better percentage and strokes gained putting. He's well above average for the field in par 5 scoring and is 2nd this year in par 4 efficiency from 400 to 450 yards. Again, the only worry about him is that he is starting in the PM/AM wave, but he's a type of grinded out player that doesn't make me worry too much if he plays in the wind. Now, if the wind advantage is huge for Thursday morning, for the Thursday morning wave, then I might think about moving up to Pat Perez at 8,900 or dropping down to JT Poston at 7,800. But I don't think I'm going to mess with Kisner. I'm pretty sure he's staying in my lineup no matter what. My final pick, it's going to be Shane Lowry at $6,900. I thought about going Daniel Berger here, but I thought that was too easy, going 4 guys over 8K this week, which, I think is the play when it comes to cash games this week. So I'm going to go a little bit lower. I'm going to go Shane Lowry at $6,900. He's another golfer I think is grossly underpriced. He hasn't been having the best season, but his price still seems too low for a golfer of his caliber in a weakish field like this one. His tee to green game has been solid. He's been good with his irons. He makes his fair share of birdies. Inside the top 20 in proximity, in par 4 efficiency from 400 to 450 yards. He has, a somewhat low ball flight, so that added with his familiarity with the wind being from Ireland and the fact that he's playing in the AM/PM wave should give him a slight advantage, especially with golfers in this price range. Now, that's it for this week. To recap my cash game cornerstones for the Wells Fargo Championship, they're going to be Paul Casey at $9,900, Francesco Molinari at $9,200, Kevin Kisner at $8,400, and Shane Lowry at $6,900. If you use these 4 golfers in your cash lineup, you still have $15,600 left to spend, so there's plenty of cap space to fill out the rest of your roster. Now, make sure to check out all the other info the FantasyFanatics.com has to offer, including their spreadsheet, lineup generator, strategy center, and a GPP video by Brad Messersmith, and the European Tour video by iPod Todd. Now, good luck this week. Let's win some money, and I'll see you guys next week.